The movie starts in an old rundown pub in Berlin. An old man named Owen hears a knock and answers the door. When he looks outside, he sees a nervous man. Even though he doesn't know the man, he seems to already know what he wants and lets him in. The stranger says, "Please, I need to see her." But Owen says, "I'm going to tell you the same thing I tell everyone that comes through that door looking to see her. Leave and take your grief elsewhere. You'll find no peace here." The man places an envelope full of money on the counter, but Owen tells the man to go home. The man leaves and Owen decides to make a video. In the video, he says this property comes with a special tenant that lives in the basement. She's tied to the property, and now that your name is on the deed, you're her sole guardian. You won't be able to escape this place, and you're the one thing that stands between her and the outside world. And now that is your sole task, and you cannot let her out of the basement. You don't know how dangerous she is, but you will. But tonight, her curse ends with me. He goes down to the basement and pours gasoline all over the floor. The lights go out. He tries to light the gasoline, but the thing touches him. He drops the lighter and burns himself instead. He tries to get out of there, but he doesn't make it. The scene switches to two young women, Katie and Iris. They're breaking into Iris's apartment she was evicted from to retrieve her things. Katie tells Iris she can stay with her as long as she wants. Then Iris gets a phone call. Katie asks what's wrong. Iris says her father died. She said, "You told me your father was dead." Iris says, "Well, he is now." Iris gets on a plane and travels to the morgue to identify her father's body. As she's leaving, she runs into a man claiming to be the solicitor acting on behalf of her father's estate. He takes her to the same pub that her father owned and lets her know he can help her sell it. They go inside and the solicitor tells her that he works with a group of investors that will help her offload this property. While she looks around, she finds the spot that her father passed away in front of the door to that basement. The man is anxious for her to sign the paperwork, but Iris wants to talk to a lawyer and tells the solicitor that she wants to stay for the night. Her friend Katie, who paid for her flight, feels Iris should not be out there alone and tells her she's on her way. That night while sleeping, an egg timer rings somewhere in the house. She gets up to investigate the noise. She goes down to the basement door. She sees all this weird writing, but she doesn't enter. She hears a noise and walks back by the bar and sees the same guy that went to see her father before he passed. The man introduces himself as Neil, hands her an envelope with $2,000 in it and says he needs to see his wife. She tells him his wife is not here, and he says she is. She's downstairs in the basement. She doesn't get it, but he offers to pay her anything she wants. She says she doesn't have a key, and that he should come back tomorrow night with more money. The man agrees and then leaves. We then cut between two scenes of Iris going through her father's things and at the solicitor's office. The solicitor is surprised she doesn't want to sell, but Iris is thinking about the money she can make. He's also wearing a ring with the same markings on the basement door. Since she's decided to hold on to the property, she has to sign the deed to take ownership. He gives her a contract written on old parchment paper and hands her an old ink pen that has the same markings that are on the basement door. He tells her it's in her hands now and gives her a videotape that her father made for whoever the new owner may be. That night, her friend Katie arrives at the pub, and she's not happy that Iris has decided to keep the property. She takes her to the basement door and tells her about the man that wants to pay $4,000 to go down there, and figures that there are tons of people that will pay for the same service. There's a knock at the door and Neil arrives and they take him to the basement. Neil walks directly to the hole in the wall and says, "If you're there, come out." And a decrepit creature emerges with a bag on its head. Neil tells the creature he'd like to speak to his wife who died last year, but the creature ignores him and walks straight to Iris. She tells the creature to stop and realizes that it obeys her. She tells it to sit down in the chair. Neil tells it he needs to speak to his wife, but the creature needs one of her personal items. She gives it his wife's engagement ring. She eats it. He straps her down and the creature shapeshifts into his mother. He's upset that his wife didn't appear, but decides to ask his mother why she took her own life years ago. She starts to cry, but then tells him it was because she couldn't stand the sight of him. She went on to say, "You ruined my life. I never wanted to be a mother." She then asks for a kiss. Neil runs and the creature attacks him. Iris again tells it to stop and they put the bag back on the creature's head. The creature goes back to the hole in the wall. They run upstairs and lock the door. He wants to try again, but they tell him no. So he gives her the rest of the money that he owes her and tells her to call him if she changes her mind because money is no object. That he just wants the chance to say goodbye. They decide to watch Iris's father's tape. Katie and Iris watch the father's tape. He explains to them that he's leaving this tape so that they don't make the same mistakes that he's made, but it doesn't really matter because you're already dead. And that woman in the basement will obey you to a point, and that she lives in a hole in the basement wall and you'll be safe as long as you don't go in there. She has the power to bring back the dead, but don't use it yourself. She only gives you 2 minutes, and after the 2 minutes, she takes control. And if you try to leave, her spells will follow you. Sickness and death will follow. She will find a way to bring you back here. Her one goal is to be set free, so you cannot ever let her out of the basement. Katie doesn't like it and wants to know why there's a woman living in the basement and that they should leave. Iris says every time she starts to get ahead, something knocks her back to where she started. Katie gives in and says she'll stay because she cares about her, but they're only going to use this one guy, nobody else. Iris goes to speak with Neil while Katie is trying to block the basement door when a picture falls off the wall. She picks it up to research the name on the back of it and finds it was one of the previous owners of the bar who took his own life. Meanwhile, Neil is explaining to Iris how he found out about the woman in the basement while he was in grief counseling, and a man told him it would cost him $2,000 to speak to his deceased wife. They go back to the basement of the pub, and Neil straps the woman to the chair and gives her his wife's old necklace. The creature eats the chain and then morphs into his wife, and he asks her, "What's the last thing you remember?" She tells him about the car accident, and then he tells her he needs to ask her one more thing. Who was it she was seeing? Iris tells him he has 30 seconds left. His wife says she doesn't know what he's talking about. Neil said he found evidence of her cheating. She tells Neil he has 5 seconds, but Neil wants answers from his wife. The timer goes off and now the creature is in control. The wife says there was no other man. I just couldn't stand the thought of being with you any longer. Tries to put the bag back on her head, but the creature won't allow it. The lights go out and then they find Baghead in the corner. The creature attacks Iris and then returns back to the hole, not before saying, "You don't understand, we're both prisoners." They go back upstairs and Iris says this wasn't really about saying goodbye. Neil says, "Wouldn't you have questions for your loved ones?" But Katie and Iris tell him he has to leave. Iris wakes up in the middle of the night and goes down to the basement. Her father appears and tells her she doesn't belong here and that Baghead can sense her fear. He then rips off his face to reveal a bag. She starts to choke and then the creature reveals it's her face under the bag. Iris wakes up from the nightmare but is still being choked by her own necklace. But Katie comes in and saves her. They decide to go to the solicitor's office and find that there's no one there. Katie shows her the picture she found. They realize that the man in the photo that took his own life was in fact the solicitor. They go back to the pub and Katie tells Iris, "We're going to take the money from Neil and we're going to get out of here." She says, "Why don't you want to leave? You were being strangled on the bathroom floor." But all Iris is thinking about is the amount of people that would pay a fortune to go in that basement. But Katie tells her she should be scared because she can't control this. Iris says, "As soon as I get something nice, you want to take it away from me, and that you only like it when I need your help, and you're a crutch." Katie takes offense to that and leaves. But when she finds the picture in her car, she decides to investigate the address. The address takes her to an abandoned house where she finds pin maps and research of Otto trying to find a way out of the pub. She packs up the evidence to bring back to Iris. The creature turns into her father. He says, "You can't be here now. How did you find this place? I didn't leave a will." But all Iris wants to know is how to control her. Her father tells her you can't control her, and that he tried to see Iris once, but when he left, the curse followed him, so he came back here. But Iris believes the creature has to listen to her, but her father tells her that's only until she gets inside your head, and she can tell she's gotten to her. The 2-minute egg timer rings and he asks for forgiveness and says, "Don't bring me back." She puts the bag back on. Iris goes back upstairs to the bar and tries to burn the deed, but it doesn't work. The contract won't burn. Katie returns to the bar with what she thinks is a way for them to get out of this situation. She walks around looking for Iris but can't find her, so she goes back to the bar. She hears a noise at the basement door, and when she gets downstairs, she sees a watch on the floor. When she goes to pick it up, Baghead is standing behind her. The demon eats a piece of her evidence and turns into Otto Vogler, the previous owner. Katie asks, "How can we get out of this?" He said, "You can't. Your fate was sealed 400 years ago when an ancient brotherhood found a woman who can bring back the dead, and they tried to abuse her power. She refused and they labeled her a witch and burned her at the stake. But she rose from the dead and took vengeance in the form of disease and famine. The Brotherhood performed a ritual and encased her in this wall. Centuries later, descendants of the Brotherhood opened the wall to abuse her power again. But the more they used her, the more powerful she became. So she destroyed the Brotherhood, and now there is only one guardian left. That's the one that signs the deed to keep her from getting to the outside world." He asks Katie, is she the gatekeeper? He says there are no answers for you here, only pain. She doesn't make it out. Iris, who was asleep on the floor, awakens to a phone call from Katie, who said she needs help and she's in the basement. She runs downstairs and hears a noise coming from Baghead's hole in the wall. She walks in and wanders around inside calling out for Katie, and then she finds her. She tries to lead her out, but when she turns one corner, she finds the real Katie's body. Baghead changes back into her demon form and chases Katie. When she comes out of the hole, Neil is there waiting. They go upstairs and Neil gives her 2 sleeping pills and says it's to keep her calm. Iris says her father told her that he failed everyone around him, and now she's doing the same. This has to end with her right now. We're going to seal the hole and no one will ever use her again. She'll be powerless. Neil says he can help, but when the sleeping pills start to kick in, he puts her to bed and goes downstairs to see Baghead. Iris awakens and goes downstairs to hear Neil trying to make a deal with the witch. He says all he wants is to be able to see his wife whenever he wants. He won't strap her down and he won't put a timer on. He signs the deed and shows it to Baghead, but Baghead says no, and his name disappears from the deed. Baghead then changes back into Sarah. She says she remembers what happened. We argued and you gave me something, and my head was spinning. He said, I just gave you something to calm you down. How was I to know you would run for the car? She said, I was going to leave you because I was scared of you. She said, we could still be a family, but not while she's the gatekeeper, not while she's alive. But Neil doesn't understand. She says, we can't be a family if she's still alive. He says, but I'm not a murderer. The witch says, you killed us, you owe us. And what do you think she'll do when she finds out? He says she'll never know. Then she changes into Iris and says she already does. He sees Iris and chases her up the stairs and says sorry, he can't lose her. She tells him he has to move on, but he doesn't want to. She runs again. He catches up to her on the roof. She pleads with him, saying she'll sign the deed over to him, but he says it's not that simple, is it? She hits him and tries to go down the ladder, but he throws her off, and she's gone. He picks up her cell phone and brings her body back to Baghead, and tells the witch to bring her back so she can sign the deed. Baghead eats the phone and turns into Iris. She said, you killed me. Neil said, you're insane to have this kind of power and not use it, and demands to know how to get his name on the deed. But she says, I should thank you. My guardian is dead, and you brought her back. Do you not understand? My name is still on the deed, and I'm her master, and now she is me. The lights go out and she brings back his mother, who breaks his arms. She then turns back into his wife and starts banging his head on the floor. When she turns back into Iris, we're shown a montage of how the witch was controlling everything from the beginning. Iris says goodbye to Neil before smashing him. She burns the deed and drops the bag and leaves the pub, letting it burn.